All right, today I have a Yukon XL GMC, and it's got rusty, crusty brake lines. This car actually isn't that rusty and crusty, but the brake line busted out right here where they always do, where they come through this plastic holder. So what I like to do first is I like to come over here. The ABS computer is underneath the car, which is terrible. Let me see if I can get the camera up in here. There we go. I like to mark it. This goes to the left front. This one goes to the right front. This last one here goes to the rear brakes. This is the supply for the front brakes, and this is the supply for the rear brakes. So then I usually write the L, the R, the B, and then those are front and rear supply. So then looking at these lines this way, you can see they're stacked a certain way, two on the bottom, two on the top. So I reach up there, I figure out where they go. And I've drawn myself a little map. So when you're looking at those lines stacked, you got the left front on the bottom, the right supply on the bottom, the front supply on the top, and the right front on the top. So what I plan to do after I cut all the lines out, I do believe I'm going to start by putting this line in first, then we'll put that line in next, then we'll put that line in next, and then put that line in next, so they're all where they're supposed to be. I also drew a map here. This is the ABS unit. This is the left front, that's the right front, that's the back, that's where the front supply is and the rear supply. Now the front supply and the rear supply on the master cylinder, that does not mean that it's the front of the master cylinder or the back of the master cylinder. It just means the supply for the rear and supply for the front. I don't know which way the lines are. If the lines are, you know, the back is front, which I do believe it is, and the rear goes to the front of the master cylinder and the front brakes go to the back of the master cylinder. I do believe that's the way it is. I'll have to double check. So let me start working on this, and I'll take some of the stuff apart and show you where I do. So you know they must have a problem with rusty brake lines when you can buy a brake line kit from the dealer for cars that are now coated in plastic to keep them from rusting. All right, I'm back. So first thing I did, I took all the tires off, took the spare tire off. I removed the inner wheel well here so I can get access to the lines. And I took some photos, and these lines were up here, and there's another line that runs up here, another line that runs up here. This line for the left front wheel and this line here that it actually is for the rear brake supply, they run in the bottom of the plastic mounts. So then it runs underneath and on down there. Also what I've done is I haven't even started on the back line yet, but there is another plastic wheel well that's here that's held in by a bunch of plastic clips and kind of sheet metal screws with a 7mm head. Once you get that out, you can kind of, there is the brake line there, and it runs up the frame. So probably with this one, we're gonna start feeding it in here, feed it in there, and then in that way. So, but I'm not too worried about the rear line. The rear line will go. It's the front line, trying to get the front line up in here so it will fit properly. So now I'm just cutting the lines, getting them out of the way. I was gonna try to leave these lines connected, but I think they're just gonna get in my way. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut them, and we'll go ahead and run the left front brake line and that one return line, because they're the ones that sit in the very bottom of the holders. So we'll go ahead and get in there and do that. So as you can see here, I just went ahead and took a pair of dikes and I cut these off. So the reason why I do that is because now I can get in here with my deep 9/16 socket, which fits these very tightly, and I can get them all out without having to worry about messing anything up. All right, so I've got the first line put in, which is going to be the left front. Left front, driver side front is the first line you put in. It runs up, it runs over, it's in the second one, and then it runs and it's in the outside bottom, and then it runs on back the frame, which you really can't see, and up into there, which I don't have a light, but it is screwed in where it's supposed to be. So now the next line I'm going to put in is the one that runs in the outside bottom, which comes off the proportioning valve. All right, now I got the third line in, which is the back of the master cylinder that runs to the front brake. That runs down in here. It's in the right position here. And then it runs and hops over the frame, and there it is into the analog brake computer. Now the next line to be put in is the right front brake line, which really they should have cut that into two pieces because it's pretty long, and it runs from there over the front of the car and then turns and comes back. This line's going to be kind of hard to put in, but we'll see if we can do it without having to splice it. Sometimes it's easier if you splice it, but sometimes they make them way too long. So like I said, on the front right hose, it runs up here into here. And actually it's kind of good that the guy decided to do all the lines, because this one here was about to break here also. Then it runs underneath the radiator core support, then back up and over to the wheel. So this is the next one we're gonna get out of here. Of course, I can just cut this one out to get it out, but to get the new line in is gonna be kind of hard. So let me see if I can get the new line in, and I'll take another one after this. All right, so I got the last front line in, which is the passenger side front that runs up through here and over and back and on down underneath. To get that line in, we had to go in here first and then kind of bend it around the wire harness to get it up through here and then in, but it will go. So here's another tip too, is these two lines I didn't have tight. I had to take those two lines off because that line actually had to go on the other side of these two lines. But once I got them on the other two sides of the lines, you see, yeah, they're a little bent. They're not 100% perfect, but it's a lot better than most people. So then I went ahead and I put all the wiring back up where it belongs. I unplugged this connector here. This connector is for the front, for the four-wheel drive, so be sure you plug that back together. That's the vent that plugs all into the plastic wheel well. Get this up. I broke one of the retainers here, so I just wire tied that. Be sure you put the ABS connector back on. I had to take the ABS connector off on the other side. That's done. This is all routed properly and over. I got to put the shield back up here. So now I'm working on the super long rear line. As you can see it right here. That's a nice long line. So I've come back here and I've popped the wire harness out of these connectors. There's a connector back behind the shock. If you get that connector off, then you pull this wire harness out of the way. There is where the line runs in and up there. I'm going to cut that off, get a socket on that to get that out, probably cut it here. I've already got it cut underneath. I'll probably take two people, one person to go start feeding through this way and the other person to guide it up to the front. So I've got four lines done up front. We'll have to get the rear line in next. So one thing on this new GM line set that I got for this Yukon, they don't sell you, well, they don't sell you. It didn't come with the lines for the rear end. So I went ahead and got the nickel copper lines, and I went ahead and just bent these. These are really easy to do. So I just went ahead and bent a new set of lines for the rear end. So now I also have the main feed for the rear end in. Oh, I gotta put this one, I gotta get this wire harness back. I unplugged this wire harness. Probably have to get a screwdriver and get that open. So I'll have to put that back in. Okay, well anyway, I got the new rear line in, and it's all tucked back up. Got the wire harness back in. I have to fix that one wire harness like I showed. And then up underneath here, as you see, my finger's in the way, all brand new lines, all hooked up, ready to go. And all the new lines there, routed properly. All the connections are all tight. Everything's plugged back in up here. So now all I need to do is put the wheel wells back in the front and the rear and bleed the system. And one thing that really makes good sense on these is you're gonna have to have a vacuum sucker. This is the Mighty Vac brake fluid sucker. And what I do with that is I fill the master cylinder up with fluid, start off at the left rear wheel, do the left rear wheel until I get fluid out of that. Then I go to the right rear wheel until I get fluid out of that. Then I go to the right front wheel, wait till I get fluid out of that, and then come over here to the left front wheel, make sure I have fluid coming out of that. Make sure that you don't run the master cylinder out of fluid. And then after you do that, this truck here, I'm probably gonna have to take and hook up the scanner and go into the brake bleeding program to bleed it out so it gets a good pedal, so I get all the air out of the ABS computer. So I hope this was a pretty good overview of how to replace the rotted brake lines in General Motors truck products. It's a very common problem. I've done a bunch of them. I've done a bunch of repairs. Now we're just starting to, replace all the lines. And this General Motors kit is very nice. I have to admit, it fits good. It's not too long or too short. This is the first time I've used a General Motors kit. It worked very good. It would be nice if it came with the rear lines for the rear end, but it did not. I've used the stainless steel lines. I did that in my Suburban, and they were a little tough to work with. They don't bend as easy as these lines did, the regular steel lines. But the stainless steel ones are very nice also. Those do come with the rear end lines. So, all right, everybody. Well, thanks for watching. I hope this gives you a good overview of how to do all the hard brake lines on the Yukon XL / Chevrolet Suburbans out there. Sometimes what I end up doing on the trucks is there's not a lot of room to get through here. So I'll take the bolts out of the cab, and on the one side, I'll take all the bolts out on the one side, and on the other side, I'll loosen, and then we'll jack the cab up like this to give you more room in here. But this time I didn't have to do it. I kind of planned my strategy out on which lines I was going to change first, and it made a big difference. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up.